Hello everyone, I am very glad that you're joining this story. Subscribe, like and comment. Enjoy the story, smile more often.
When your own mom shrugs off your baby shower like it's a canceled dentist appointment, you stop being the bigger person. You stop playing nice. You stop giving the benefit of the doubt to people who would gladly step over your tired, swollen, 9 months pregnant body to get to a goddamn casserole. You start seeing things for what they really are. I had spent the better part of that week wrapping little white candles in pink ribbon. I baked my own lemon cupcakes because I didn't want to inconvenience anyone. I ordered a custom banner that said, "Welcome baby girl," in gold script, not too flashy but still sweet. I cleaned the house top to bottom, even though my back had been killing me for 3 days straight, and I hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night since February. I had done all this with the idea, no, the fantasy that this day would be different. That they would show up for me this time. That maybe, just maybe, I'd feel like I had a real family for once. But when 3 o'clock hit and the house was silent except for the soft hum of the baby monitor I'd been testing, I knew. I sat there on the couch, legs numb from the awkward angle I had crammed myself into, the damn cupcake tray untouched, the candles neatly laid out like little corpses. I stared at my phone for a solid hour. No calls. No texts. Not even a goddamn, "Hey, we're running late." Jake, my partner, had taken the day to run errands and give us girls time together. He thought it would mean something to me, this being my first baby and all. He thought maybe, after all the times I'd gone to bat for them, they'd come through. He even bought balloons. I didn't have the heart to tell him to cancel the delivery. By 5, I gave up. I peeled off the dress I'd ironed the night before, white, empire waist, soft cotton, just enough stretch to not make me look like a blimp, and I threw on his old hoodie. I sat on the floor in the nursery with the dog curled up next to me, staring at the unopened diaper cake my best friend from work sent by mail. She was the only one who had actually sent something. She lived in another state and was still more present than my own damn family. At 6:30, the group chat lit up. First was Brenda, my younger sister, always glued to her phone unless it involved actual effort. "Wait, was that today?" Then my mom chimed in, "Oh honey, we didn't think it really mattered. It's not like you're a first-time mom, right?" I stared at that sentence so long I felt like it was branded into my skull. Not a first-time mom? I had a miscarriage 2 years ago at 17 weeks. They knew that. Hell, Mom came over the day after and acted like it was a bad stomach bug I'd eventually get over. That's the thing about being the strong one in the family. They think your silence equals strength. They think your patience is proof you're fine. They think you don't break. I didn't respond right away. I took my time. I went to the kitchen, threw out the untouched cupcakes, peeled off the little decorations, dropped each into the trash like a quiet ritual. Then I came back to my phone, opened the group chat, typed out, "Thanks anyway," followed by a heart emoji and hit send. And then I left the group. No long speech. No guilt tripping. No emotional paragraphs about how hurt I was or how much effort I had put in. Just a silent, smiling goodbye. Then I opened my banking app and started the list. Brenda's rent? Gone. Mom's car insurance? Done. The Netflix, the Hulu, the grocery deliveries I'd been paying for without so much as a thank you? Every single one of them canceled before the clock hit 7. I smiled while I did it. Not because I wasn't hurt, hell, I was devastated, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control again. I wasn't begging them to love me. I wasn't overcompensating to feel worthy. I was done playing the role of the reliable daughter, the fixer, the giver. The ATM with a heartbeat. Jake came home just as I was turning off the lights in the living room. He took one look at my face, glanced at the untouched cupcakes, the still full punch bowl, and he didn't ask a thing. He just sat beside me on the couch and pulled me into his arms like he knew words wouldn't cut it. "They didn't come," I whispered into his hoodie. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't offer excuses for them. He just held me tighter, and for once, that was enough. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. But the next morning, when the notifications started coming in, the bounced payments, the text messages, the missed calls, I didn't answer. I watched it all pile up like debris from a slow-moving train wreck. I let them stew in confusion, wondering what had happened, what they had done to deserve being cut off. And maybe they didn't even get it yet. But they would. Very, very soon. The thing about generosity is that it becomes invisible the moment people expect it. What starts out as a kind gesture, helping with rent, covering an emergency bill, tossing $50 toward groceries, slowly turns into an unspoken responsibility you never actually agreed to. One day you're just doing someone a favor, and the next, you're their backup checking account, their monthly safety net, their go-to sucker when they've blown their paycheck on dumb shit like fake nails and vape cartridges. I had been paying Brenda's rent on and off for 3 years. Not every single month, but enough that the building manager knew my name and how I liked to process payments, ACH, always before the first, with a little buffer because Brenda was never early with anything. First it was a one-time thing, then it was just until I find a job, and eventually it turned into a quiet routine where she didn't even ask anymore. She'd just text, short again, and I'd reply with a thumbs up and send it through. My mom? Her car insurance, her cell bill, and at one point, her dog's prescription food. She had this yappy Pomeranian with allergies, and I was footing the bill for its special kibble while I was eating ramen in my second trimester. But God forbid I bring that up, or suddenly I'd be the ungrateful daughter who thinks she's better than everyone now that she's got money. Mark was the worst, though. The king of bad decisions. Payday loans, overdraft fees, gas station gambling machines. He found every possible way to screw himself, and every time, he came to me with the same tired speech about how this time would be different. This time, he just needed $100 to hold him over. This time, it was for his kid's birthday. This time, it was life or death. I was the idiot who always believed him because I remembered being broke once. I remembered having nothing. I remembered the way it felt when no one helped. So I helped. And helped. And helped. Between my sister's rent and my mom's Netflix, I was sending out almost $190 every week. That's what, like, over $10,000 a month? I didn't think about it at first. It just became part of my life, like brushing my teeth or ignoring their passive-aggressive comments at family dinners. I made good money, sure, but it wasn't endless. And when I got pregnant, I figured they'd finally back off, finally step up, finally say, "You've done enough, let us help you now." But instead, they did what they always did, absolutely nothing. So after the baby shower disaster, I sat down with a pen and paper and wrote out every single recurring charge I was responsible for. Every bill that wasn't mine. Every autopay, every Cash App transfer, every quiet favor. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just got tired. Bone deep, soul level tired. And I pulled the plug. I called Brenda's landlord and told him she'd have to figure it out this month. I canceled the autopay and removed my name from the portal. I emailed the car insurance company and told them I'd no longer be paying for a policy that wasn't mine. I turned off the Netflix, the Hulu, the HBO, even the damn Spotify family plan. I closed the grocery account where Mom had been adding items every week like it was a game. I didn't warn anyone. I didn't explain. I just stopped. The first one to notice was, of course, Brenda. At 8:30 the next morning, my phone lit up with a text that said, "WTF? My rent bounced. They said it didn't go through. Are you changing cards or something?" I stared at that message like it was written in crayon. No apology for missing my baby shower. No check-in. No mention of me or the baby. Just rent. Just money. Just her usual brand of self-absorption wrapped in zero self-awareness. I put the phone down without answering. 10 minutes later, another text. This one from Mark. "Yo, I just got a notice from Check Advance. You send the transfer yet? They're charging me interest again." That one made me laugh. I literally laughed out loud, sitting there in my kitchen with a cold cup of coffee, watching the desperation start to seep in. Not desperation for me. Not worry. Not guilt. Just desperation for the money. I was never a sister to them. I was a damn wallet with legs. By noon, my mom had sent 3 messages, each more vague and passive-aggressive than the last. "Hope everything's okay. Did you change your password on the Hulu? Let me know if I need to do something different for the phone bill. Still not a single acknowledgement of the baby shower. Still not even a hint of an apology. Just the quiet expectation that I would keep doing what I'd always done, clean up after their mess, pay the bill, smile through it, and say thank you for the privilege. At 2:35, Brenda called. I didn't answer. She called again. I hit decline. Then she texted one word, "Oh, seriously." Like I was the one who'd crossed the line. I turned off my phone and tossed it across the bed. Jake walked in just as I was staring at the ceiling, arms tucked behind my head, wondering how long it would take before they actually realized they'd lost their meal ticket. He sat on the edge of the bed, held up a grocery bag, and said, "Got you that weird pickle ice cream you wanted?" I smiled, for real this time. And somewhere in the back of my head, I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. They hadn't really felt it yet. The panic hadn't kicked in. But it would. Oh, it would. By the third day, the silence on my end had started to sting, and they could feel it. Not in their hearts, because I don't think any of them ever truly felt anything that didn't revolve around themselves, but in their wallets, in their routines, in the quiet collapse of the invisible scaffolding I'd been holding up for years without recognition. That's when the real panic set in, not because they missed me, but because they missed what I provided, like junkies going through withdrawal, twitching at the absence of convenience. Janice was the first to crack publicly. She did what all emotionally stunted boomers do when confronted with conflict. They log onto Facebook and turn it into a therapy session. She posted some cropped photo of a Thanksgiving table from 5 years ago, captioned with a bitter little slice of manipulation disguised as nostalgia, sad to see how selfish people can be. Family used to mean something. We used to be close. Now it's all me, me, me. The comments rolled in like she expected. A few of her church friends jumped in with the usual, "So sorry you're going through this, and you deserve better." One woman even added, "Kids these days have no loyalty," as if she'd just survived a war instead of missed a baby shower she never intended to attend. I saw the post. Of course I did. Someone always sends you the thing you're not supposed to see, usually with a message that says, "Just thought you should know." I didn't respond, not because I didn't have words for it, but because giving it oxygen would have validated her twisted version of events. Let her followers think she's the victim. Let her play her role. The truth is, she was never going to tell them about the baby shower, or the cupcakes, or the fact that I cried on my nursery floor next to a box of unopened party favors. That would require admitting she screwed up. That would mean acknowledging that I, the daughter who once drove her to the ER after her blood pressure spiked, was now officially done giving a damn. Later that afternoon, I opened my banking app again, double-checking every link, every account, every leftover obligation I might have missed. That's when I saw it. Mark's automatic bank transfer, set up to drop $200 into his account on the 15th of every month. Not a loan. Not an IOU. Just a quiet little drip feed of money that had somehow become routine. I had forgotten it existed, which felt insane considering how much I had been scraping lately to prepare for maternity leave. I canceled it without hesitation. The thing with Mark is, he's a volcano wrapped in flannel. He doesn't erupt often, but when he does, you better believe there's going to be property damage. Not literal, but emotional, the kind that leaves craters in your trust and burns bridges so thoroughly that not even ashes remain. So I wasn't exactly surprised when, less than 4 hours after the canceled payment, I heard the sound of his truck pulling into our driveway. Jake was at the store again, probably picking up some other bizarre craving I'd mentioned once in passing. I was home alone, sitting on the couch with a heating pad strapped across my back, trying to ignore the dull ache that had been creeping lower every day. I didn't get up right away. I heard the knock, heavy, impatient. 3 sharp thuds followed by the doorbell, like he was already pissed before I'd even opened it. I debated not answering, just letting him stew out there until he left, but something told me that wouldn't work. Mark didn't do subtle. Mark didn't do patient. And more importantly, Mark didn't leave when he thought you owed him something. When I opened the door, he looked the same as always, cheap jeans, wrinkled t-shirt, ball cap pulled down low over eyes that hadn't seen a sober morning in at least a week. His mouth was already set in a line of irritation, and he skipped the pleasantries. "What the hell, Lauren?" he barked, like we were in a goddamn courtroom. I leaned against the doorframe, one hand instinctively resting on the swell of my belly. "Hi, Mark. Good to see you too." "Don't start with the sarcasm," he snapped. "You canceled the transfer. You didn't even tell me." "I didn't think I had to," I said flatly. "It's not your money." He blinked like I'd slapped him. "I got bills. Rent. Child support. What am I supposed to do now?" I shrugged, not out of cruelty, but because I truly didn't know how else to respond. "Figure it out, the same way I've had to." He threw his hands in the air, pacing on the porch like a caged dog. "Unbelievable. You cut everyone off just 'cause we missed some stupid baby party." And there it was. "Some stupid baby party," I repeated, letting the words settle between us. "You mean the one where your pregnant sister sat alone for 3 hours because not a single person in her family could bother to show up or send a card or a call?" He tried to backpedal, his voice shifting into that slippery, defensive tone I knew too well. "It's not like that. We just didn't think it was a big deal. Brenda said you'd understand." I laughed, low and bitter. "Brenda thinks TikTok is a valid source of medical advice. She also hasn't paid her own rent in 4 years." He sighed, leaning against the railing, his anger deflating just a little. "Look, I'm sorry. All right? I wasn't trying to be a dick." I studied his face, trying to find even a flicker of genuine remorse. Maybe it was there, buried under years of entitlement and disappointment, but I wasn't in the mood to dig it out. "I'm not your bank, Mark. I'm your sister. Or at least I was." He didn't have anything to say to that. I didn't invite him in. I didn't offer him water. I didn't ask about his kid. I just watched him leave, his boots scuffing against the pavement, his pride trailing behind him like a worn-out blanket he couldn't bear to let go of. As the door closed behind him, I felt the first kick in nearly an hour, like the baby was giving me a nod of approval. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about finally choosing myself. They came in waves, like a goddamn storm rolling in from 3 different directions. First Mark again, showing up 2 days later with his ball cap in hand and some half-assed story about how he finally got it, and how he didn't mean anything by what he said on the porch. Then Brenda came with her mascara already smudged, screaming before I even opened the front door, arms flailing and voice breaking like I had physically assaulted her by simply cutting off the money. And then finally, Janice arrived in her usual armor of perfume, pearls, and passive aggression, carrying a fake casserole and a real sense of entitlement, standing in my hallway like it was her own house, and I was the rude one for not offering her a seat. Jake tried to shield me from them at first, God bless him, but they were relentless in the way only family knows how to be. They banged on the doors, called every mutual contact we had, showed up at his work pretending they were just concerned about my mental health, like they hadn't just collectively forgotten about my existence 3 weeks ago. Eventually, I told him to let them in, not because I wanted to talk, not because I thought there was a chance in hell they'd apologize, but because I needed to see it. I needed to look them in the eyes and feel nothing for the first time in my life. They sat in the living room like they owned the place, each in their own corner of the couch like it was a courtroom, and I was the judge about to hand down sentencing. Mark started talking first, which surprised no one. He had this whole speech prepared, full of practiced pauses and words he probably Googled to sound more reflective. He said things like, "I didn't realize how much you were carrying," and "I never meant to take you for granted," but his eyes kept flicking toward the TV like he was bored of his own bullshit. Brenda went next, but she didn't apologize, she accused. She yelled about how I blindsided her, how I embarrassed her in front of her landlord, how she couldn't believe I'd stoop so low as to weaponize money. That was the word she used. Weaponize. As if paying her rent for 4 years without asking for a dime in return was some kind of long con designed to ruin her life the moment I stopped. She called me selfish. She called me dramatic. She said, "You're not even the only one in this family having problems," as if that somehow justified everything they'd done, or rather, everything they hadn't done. Janice sat in silence for most of it, her arms crossed and her expression carefully curated into what I've come to call her church face, the one she wears when she's pretending to be holy but secretly judging every soul in the room. When she finally spoke, it was the same tired guilt trip she'd been using since I was 14. She said things like, "I raised you better than this, and family is supposed to forgive, and my personal favorite, you've always been the strong one, Lauren, and now you're just being cruel." I didn't interrupt. I didn't defend myself. I let them speak until their voices cracked and their excuses turned into empty air. I sat there with my hands resting on my stomach, feeling the occasional flutter from the baby, watching them like a therapist in the last 10 minutes of a session they were too late to save. Then I stood up without a word, walked to the side table, and picked up 3 white envelopes. Each one had their name written on it in clean black ink. I handed them out one by one, Mark first, then Brenda, then Janice, like invitations to their own reckoning. They looked confused at first, like they thought it might be a check, or a peace offering, or maybe a letter begging for understanding. But it wasn't. Inside each envelope was a single photograph. A picture of the empty living room from the day of the baby shower. The pink and gold banner still hanging above the fireplace. The table full of cupcakes and untouched snacks. The stack of unused paper plates and unopened sparkling juice. No people. No presents. Just silence and decorations. And underneath the photo, a handwritten note in my neat cursive that read, "This is how much I mattered." No one said anything. Mark looked at the photo like it was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Brenda's face went blank, her lips twitching like she was trying to form a sentence, but didn't have the vocabulary for remorse. Janice just stared at me with eyes that were more furious than sad, more insulted than ashamed. "You didn't even tell us you were hurting," Janice finally said, her voice full of disbelief. "I've been telling you for years," I replied, calm as a lake before the storm. "You just didn't want to hear it." Jake came into the room then, quiet and cautious, like he could sense the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. He stood beside me and didn't say a word, just slid his hand into mine like he always did when I needed grounding. As they gathered their things in silence, no thank yous, no parting words, I walked them to the door. I didn't hug them. I didn't ask them to stay. I just opened the door and waited until each one of them crossed the threshold, stepping off the porch like they had no idea how to leave with grace. Brenda muttered something under her breath, but I didn't ask her to repeat it. Janice looked back once, and I saw it then, the flicker of fear in her eyes, not because of what I'd done, but because she knew I wasn't bluffing this time. After the door closed, Jake looked at me and asked, "Do you think maybe you went too far?" I let the silence stretch between us for a second, the question hanging in the air like smoke. "Not yet," I said, and I meant every single word. There's something deeply sobering about staring down a blank sheet of paper that will outlive you. Something about putting your name next to the words, last will and testament, that stops time in a way nothing else can. It doesn't matter how old you are, how healthy you feel, or how far along you are in growing a brand new life inside your body. Writing a will makes you face the quiet, unromantic truth that nothing lasts forever, especially not the people you once called family. I sat at the dining room table with a pen in one hand and my lawyer on speakerphone, the baby's latest ultrasound photo tucked under a glass coaster like a silent witness to everything I was about to say. I had no hesitation, no second guessing, no flicker of nostalgia to slow me down. Every asset, every account, every savings bond and dusty old box of valuables from the attic, all of it went to the baby. Not a cent to Brenda. Not a penny to Mark. And definitely not a single dime or dish or family heirloom to Janice, who once swore she'd make sure her grandchildren were taken care of, only to vanish the second I needed something more than a lukewarm casserole and a guilt trip. Jake supported the decision, though he didn't say much about it. He knew better than to try and play peacemaker, especially after watching how they ambushed me last week in my own home, each one armed with excuses instead of apologies. He sat across from me while I reviewed everything, just quietly holding the baby monitor like it was already protecting something sacred. I didn't need his approval, but I appreciated his presence. Some people show love with words, others with silence that says, I'm here no matter what. When the documents were done, notarized, sealed, and copied, I mailed one copy to each of them. No cover letter. No explanation. Just the raw, formal truth of what I now considered their legacy in my life. Nothing. I sent them off with the same quiet finality I had used to cancel their payments, and I didn't think twice. Janice was the first to respond, of course, because she always needs the last word, even when she's the one who started the fire in the first place. The message came late at night, just as I was climbing into bed, the kind of perfectly timed guilt bomb she was known for. You're punishing us over one silly thing. We love you. I stared at the text, the words sharp and sweet like poisoned candy. It was so on brand I almost laughed. One silly thing. As if missing the baby shower was the only crack in the wall, not the final straw in a decades-long demolition. As if the years of taking, of gaslighting, of expecting me to be the emotional sponge and financial crutch for every damn one of them didn't count for something. As if love was something you could just say and expect it to erase every time you chose convenience over care. I typed back only 5 words. I believed that. Once. Then I turned off my phone and let the silence reclaim the room. The next few days passed quietly with no calls, no texts, no banging on the door or Facebook pity posts. Maybe they were regrouping, maybe they were planning one last grand gesture, or maybe, finally, they were beginning to understand that I wasn't bluffing. That I wasn't angry in the way they were used to, the kind that explodes and burns out and apologizes with baked goods and wine. I was done in the way that settles in your bones. The kind of done that doesn't leave room for comebacks. I spent that weekend setting up the nursery, folding tiny onesies and organizing diapers by brand and size like a woman preparing for battle and peace all at once. There was a sense of calm in that space that I hadn't felt in weeks, maybe even months, a sense that this, at least, I could control. That this child would enter a world where I drew the lines, where my boundaries weren't just acknowledged but respected. And for the first time in years, I felt proud of myself not for giving endlessly, but for finally saying no. On Sunday morning, a package showed up at the doorstep. No return address, just soft brown paper and a small white ribbon tied around the middle. Jake brought it inside, resting it on the kitchen counter while I finished wiping down the nursery window. We both looked at it for a long moment before either of us said a word. There was no tag. No handwriting to recognize, no stamp or clue about where it had come from. Just a small square box, about the size of a shoebox, wrapped neatly and with care. I thought about opening it right then and there, but something stopped me, an instinct, maybe, or a sense that the timing wasn't right. That whatever was inside didn't need to be unwrapped just yet. I carried it into the nursery and placed it on the top shelf of the closet, next to the baby books and unopened blankets, letting it sit like a silent question I didn't need to answer today. As I stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, the other resting on the curve of my belly, Jake came up behind me and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded slowly, taking one last look at the soft yellow walls, the rocking chair in the corner, the quiet promise of new beginnings. "I think so," I said. "I think I will be." And as I closed the door, a voice echoed in my head, not angry, not bitter, just clear. "Forgiveness is free. But forgetting? That shall cost you." And someone somewhere just started their tab.